Today we're going to talk about a few ways in which I use AI in the terminal, starting with running models on my terminal. For that, my main tool of usage is Simon Willison's LLMCLI. If you don't know who Simon Willison is, he's just an amazing builder who makes these incredibly useful tools, a lot of them for the terminal. And he was also the co-founder, co-creator of Django, if I'm not mistaken. He's just an amazing guy. He's just one of the best guys to follow right now if you want to keep up with AI tools and AI in general. So his LLMCLI is pretty awesome. So essentially, it's a CLI utility for interacting with large language models. It's extremely simple to use. You can use it with pip install or with brew install if you're on a Mac. You can even use it with UV, which is really cool. So you just copy this, pip install, you open up a terminal, you run this, and when you do, once you've done that, you have to set up your OpenAI keys. So you can run LLM key set OpenAI, right? And that will prompt you to set up your OpenAI API key. And once you've done that, you can do things like, hi, tell me 3 jokes in 3 different languages: English, Portuguese, and Italian. And there we go. You can interact with large language models directly on your terminal, which is pretty incredible. Now, besides that, you can also set up different models. There's a bunch of functionality behind this, which I really like. One of my favorite ways of using it is with different models. So for example, I can set up -m, and then I can set up whatever model I want. There's obviously a set of models that are supported, and you can check that out by going to the documentation. And you can check out here all the things that you have available with the CLI, and where you can check in to see which models are available for you is LLM models. So you can say LLM models, and you can see all the models that you have available with the CLI. So as you can see, I have a bunch of OpenAI models and Anthropic models like Claude, etc. And you can see here at the bottom that the default model is GPT-4o Mini, because it's like fast and good enough for most of the things that you would do in a terminal. I usually use either the default or GPT-4o or Claude 3.7 Sonnet, at least with this LLMCLI. And you can also set up local models by installing the plugin GPT-4o, which you can find here on the documentation as well. So that's the first one that I really like, so check that out. Now, moving on, the other tool that I really like is Olamma. So Olamma is essentially an amazing tool for running local models, and it works perfectly on the terminal. Essentially what you do is you go to olamma.ai or olamma.com, and here you can download the software that you're going to need so that you can actually run Olamma on your terminal. Once you've done that, you can go to the Olamma GitHub. And here, once you've installed Olamma on the software, you can run this command, for example, Olamma run Llama 3.2 or Olamma run whatever model you want. And that will run the model in a chat interface. So if I run Olamma run Llama 3.2, now I'm interacting with the model Llama 3.2. If you've never downloaded the Llama 3.2 model on your terminal, that's going to download that for you automatically. Now, the question that you can ask is, Lucas, how do I know if I can download a model to my machine? Like, it might be a model that's too big for your machine. So what you have to do is you have to go to olamma.ai, you go to models, and then, for example, I love using Gemma 3, the recently released open source model from Google. So you can come in here under that model, specify the number of parameters you want. And for that, you're going to see how much of memory that model is going to occupy. As you can see here, the model is going to occupy like around 3.3 gigs. And that's fine for me. I have like 120 gigs of RAM in my machine and a Neural Engine GPU, like with 40 cores. It's like a powerful Mac. So I can run that. And essentially, most of the times you're going to be able to run up to like the 27 billion parameters, 32 billion parameters, which are around from like 15 to 20 gigs of RAM. That's going to require from your machine in order to run. And more than that, then you're going to have to look at inference providers like Grok and others like VLLM or SGLang, etc. But once you've done that, you can run, as I said, Olamma run whatever model you want, like for example, Gemma 3. And you can run a command like, hey, write a 1-paragraph essay on why the terminal is the best tool for productivity. I don't know, whatever you want. And that will run that prompt, that command automatically. And this is running locally on my machine, which is so awesome, right? Now, next thing in line here, folks, is there's a bunch of other tools that you can run on your terminals. Probably there might be even better ones than the ones that I'm talking about here, but I really do like these ones. There's also Olamma CPP, and a bunch of LM Studio has a CLI too. There's a bunch of other options that you can take a look. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is working with databases. And this is something I'm just putting here because of the amazing dataset CLI invented by the one and only Mr. Simon Willison. And I really like this too, especially because because I work so much with LLM, I can do stuff like this, which is if you go to the dataset CLI GitHub, so dataset CLI GitHub, right? And you come over here and you go to this link, you go down, and you run brew install dataset, right? You run this. Once you've run this, you can run commands like this. And let me just show you. There you go. Dataset LM logs path. I'm actually going to save this because I want to show you later how cool this is. So I want to have it here all saved up. Yeah. And what's cool about this command is that it will open up your database of all your interactions that you've had with the LLMCLI. So this is getting the path to the logs folder where the database of all your chats are stored, and you open that up with dataset. So what you can do is you will open up this link on your local host, and now here we go. And now you can see, for example, if I click on logs, you can say, if you can run this SQL command, and you can have access to all your interactions with the LLMCLI. So for example, if I go here to responses, there you go, 10 ideas for whatever, and we can filter by model. So I can say GPT-4o Mini, we can apply, and now these are all my recent interactions with that model. And you can do all sorts of cool stuff with this. I mean, essentially, you can use it for taking all of this information of all my previous interactions with the LLMCLI. And, I'm going to actually do a presentation recently on like the different ways that I use LLM. So this information is going to be absolutely key. So it's pretty cool. You can use dataset for all sorts of things, but this is definitely one of my favorites. Now, the next example that I really like is working with embeddings. Now, if you don't know what an embedding is just a vectorized representation of text. It means a list of numbers that represents the semantics that's inside of a text. And you can work with those in the terminal to quickly search through a bunch of documents and things like that. So for that, we're going to use Simon Willison's again, at the LLMCLI, because it supports embeddings and it works super well. So what you can do is pretty simple. You go to the embeddings with the CLI section in the LLMCLI documentation, and you're going to see examples on how to create a simple embedding for a phrase and then for multiple documents, etc. So if we just copy this command here, we can go to the terminal, and then we can create an embedding for this phrase using this model called TreeSmall. And what you're going to get is just a list of a bunch of numbers which represent the embedding of this phrase. Now, pretty cool. That on itself is not useful, but what we can do, we can use this to essentially create an embedding for potentially a bunch of phrases. And then when you want to search through those, you can run a command that easily searches through those, ranks them according to how close they are to your query, and then gives you an output. So for example, I can create this embedding, and then I'm embedding this phrase, my happy hound. So I do that. And now what I can do is I can run a command called LLMSimilar, which comes with the LLMCLI. And what I can do is I can look up, similar phrases to hound, which obviously is going to return this, right? Because it's the only one in this particular embedding. And there you go. We just created that. So super cool. And what's even cooler is that we can do that with, for example, a bunch of notes in a folder. So I can run a command which is called embed multi. And in this case, I'm creating this embedding of my notes, which I'm calling my notes. I'm using this model Jina Embeddings. And from the files are in this folder on my current folder called sample notes. And it's all the Markdown files. And then I'm storing that in the notes.db. And what's cool is when we do this, we create this database, this SQLite database that we can then query with LM similar. So in this case, I'm going to be getting all the similar information from this my notes embedding that's stored in the notes.database. And I want similarity to this query, prompts about learning and so on. So if I run this is what we're going to get. We run this and there you go. We get a ranking of all the embeddings that are similar to that. We get the score. So you see there's an 85% score here. And this score is, I'm not 100% sure, but it's probably just the cosine similarity between the query and the embedded notes. And we get the content of those notes that's similar to what we were asking. So you can see that in the file AI tutor prompt.md, we had the content that was the closest to prompts about learning, which makes perfect sense, right? So this is pretty cool. Definitely check out LLMCLI with all its capabilities. It's freaking amazing. Now, working beyond text, folks, I love working with screenshots. And again, the one and only Simon Willison has an amazing tool about that called Shot Scraper, which essentially allows you to work with, create a full screenshot for a web page by just running a simple terminal command. So I can run Shot Scraper. And in this case, I'm getting the screenshot of the GitHub repo for Shot Scraper. And when I run this, it's pretty cool because it saves locally here to this file, right? And I had already run it once, so it saved another image. And when I open that up, you can see that I get a full screenshot of that repo, which is pretty freaking awesome. Because then you can work with this to do different things. And later on this presentation, we're going to see how to work with images with the LLMCLI and in different interesting ways. So working with screenshots is awesome. And finally, we can get to piping. Now, piping is an essential part of working with AI in the terminal because you're going to be able to get input from one place and then take it to another place and so on and so forth. So for example, what I can do is I can say, create a fake database of people with their names, ages, and interests as a single .txt file. And then with this command, I'm going to save that to sample db.txt. All right. So what's going to happen is we're saving the outputs of this call to the LLM to this file called sample db.txt. And now I can do cat sample db.txt. And you can see that we created this fake database here. It's not perfect. We got a little bit of like some extra stuff that usually we can trim it. But I'm just going to copy this. And I'm just going to run quickly. I'm going to open up cursor in my terminal here. I'm going to go to that sample db.txt. I'm going to remove this. We're going to see how to do this automatically later, but now we're just going to do it by hand. Now we have this sample db file, age, interests, etc., everything in a txt file. So now I'm going to come back to the terminal, and what we can do now is I can say cat the sample db.txt, and I can pipe that to an LLM, right? So I can say something like, for example, retrieve the oldest person in this DB with all their info. And now, there you go, Quentin Tarantino, 56, interest filmmaking, writing, collecting. All right, so let's see, 50, 49, 56. Yeah, that's the oldest person in this DB. That's pretty cool. And it got the information correctly. So the point is to show how you can cat the outputs of a file and pipe that with the pipe command, with the pipe operator to the LLMCLI and then do some information. And you can do that in many different interesting ways. And we're going to see a few of those in just a sec. So it's pretty cool. We can do different things, and often we can clean up I have a bunch of aliases here, like clean, Markdown, Mermaid, Python, HTML, Jinja, Bash, diff, because sometimes, for example, I can say, what is a command to list 5 random files in current directory and show their contents, right? And I can pipe to clean bash, which is a little bash one-liner that cleans up. It's either a bash one-liner or a Python script, I don't remember now, but it cleans up the outputs of this LLM, getting only the command part that's going to be in the output of this model. So when I run this, folks, this is what we're going to get. Yeah, I was supposed to get just this, but I guess there was no bash. It should come with bash in order for this to work perfect, but that's all right. We can say something like generate a Markdown file with a 3-paragraph essay on how the terminal is awesome, right? So we can do that, and then we can say clean Markdown. So hopefully the output that contains the ticks and the Markdown part are going to be cleaned up from this output. So if we wait a sec, we should get, there we go, and we get it perfectly. We just get the Markdown in that output. As you can see here, this is just the Markdown, which is pretty awesome. So piping is awesome. You can use it in many powerful ways. Now, creating aliases. I mentioned the idea of creating aliases before, and it's super fun when you integrate with LLMs. For example, I could say something like alias summarize is equal to LLM minus M GPT 4.0, and then I can say summarize this, and I can write this so that it takes in input within the terminal. So when I do this, and I'm gonna double quotes here and double quotes here so we don't get messed up. We don't mess up. I think that should work. Summarize, I'm gonna say summarize this info. There you go. Okay, so now that I have this command summarize this info, what I can do is, for example, if I go to my sample DB that we just created, right? And I say cat sample DB, and then I pipe this to summarize this info. Hopefully what we're going to be able to get is a summary of this file with just a single command. There you go. This is awesome. This list contains a bunch of and there you go. We get a summary of that information, which is really, really cool. You even get more information that I wanted. So you can do that with a bunch of things. For example, you could do this to summarize things, to create specified summaries with bullet points. You can create all sorts of fancy, interesting templates, and aliases are super powerful. And then if you want to reuse them forever in your terminal, you go to aliases file that usually would be on your root folder from your machine. It's called .aliases, and then in there you save this command that you just did, alias, etc., etc. Save that in another line, and then you're good to go. You can reuse this forever. Every time the terminal runs, it's going to load up those aliases, and you're going to be able to reuse this command, which is super cool, awesome, amazing. So aliases are awesome, folks. Now, working with the clipboard. This is one of my favorite things because PB copy and PB paste are really like time savers for me. So we can combine this idea of piping files with quick copy and paste in order to be, agile when working with LLMs. For example, I could come over to the website here. I could come over to, for example, this section of the embeddings with the CLI in the documentation here for Simon Willis's tool. I can hit Control A and then Control C. So now I have this on my clipboard. So what I did is I could run PB paste and then pipe that to LLM, and I'm going to go GPT 4.0. And then I could say, so now this model has access to the contents of my clipboard through this command PB paste. And then I could say, extract from this documentation all the relevant commands to work with embeddings in the terminal, properly indexed into a Markdown style. And I'm going to get fancy. I'm going to say clean Markdown. And I'm going to save it as Embeddings CLI main commands.md. So what's happening is, hopefully, I'm going to paste from my clipboard. I'm going to pipe that to a model and run this prompt. And then I'm going to clean it up with clean Markdown. And then I'm going to save that to a file called embedding main CLIs, etc. So when I run this, hopefully everything's going to work. And we're going to be able to see the results. So 1, 2, 3, and there you go. So now if I go to embedding CLI, there you go, folks. All the commands from that embedding CLI, embed dev, All right. I'm not trusting this very much. Embed delete. That makes no sense. Let me see. Embed delete. Nope. So I think we had maybe an issue of me not copying properly the contents of the CLI. So let me just try that again. So I'm going to go Control A, Control C. And now I'm going to go PB paste. PB paste. All right, so that's working beautifully. Now PB paste, beautiful. And now we're gonna do that. Yeah, all right, so now we run cat embed. Now folks, as you can see, all the proper commands have been extracted from that documentation and saved to this file in the style that we were going for, which is pretty awesome. You see embed multi, embedding the phrases, everything got saved properly. So this is pretty cool. So the thing is, I don't like writing all of this. So I wrote a little alias where PB paste for me is just the letter P, and PB copy, which copies to my clipboard, is the letter C. So I can do, for example, we can, paste the outputs of this documentation and then say to the model, summarize these docs into 2 sentences. And when I run this, it should take the output of my clipboard and summarize it quickly. And you get that output beautiful, store embeddings, etc. Everything's correct. So this is just amazing. It's fast. It works perfectly. And I just have to write the letter P to take whatever and paste it, send that to an LLM. And I can do that. I can do the same in order to get a conversation or an explanation from an LLM and paste that to my clipboard. So I can say LM-M GPT-4o, and then I can send it a prompt like, write down 10 ways I can use the terminal to increase my productivity, something like that. And then I can do pipe C, and that's going to be the same as writing pipe PB copy, which means it's going to copy to my clipboard. So when I hit this, nothing's going to be shown in the terminal, but I'll show you in a sec that something was copied to my clipboard automatically. So now if I open up a terminal here, I open up cursor and I just write C, all of that answer from the model got saved to my clipboard. So it's pretty cool. So automating repetitive tasks, efficient file management, command line tools, blah, blah, blah. Everything got saved here. So it's pretty cool. So that's another way of working with AI in the terminal that I really like by integrating this idea. So definitely check this out. Now, we've already talked about that. We already showed these examples. We already showed those. So one thing that you can do with piping that's pretty cool is you can chain prompts together. That's another interesting way of working with AI. So what you can do is you can do something like, for example, I can write LLM, we can take these 10 examples here, right? And we can paste that to the clipboard and we can say, write, we can say, let's say, write 3 jokes about AI and life, whatever it is. And then we can pipe that and we can say, give each of these jokes a title and output the title plus the joke as bullet points, something like that. And now what we're doing is, this is the first prompt that's writing 3 jokes about AI and life. And then the second prompt is giving these jokes a title and then getting the joke plus the title as bullet points, all right? And when I run this, we're gonna send the outputs of this first prompt to this model, which is gonna process this one. And then we're gonna get, there you go, we get all that information. So we get like a title and a joke, a title and a joke, etc. And you can do that. You can expand this to do whatever you want. And you can do a bunch, you can do multiple prompts, etc. So it's a pretty interesting way of working with AI in that sense. All right. So chaining prompts is really fun. And you can obviously, for example, when it comes to chaining prompts, so folks, I have a paper here on my folder, right? It's about using prompts to teach learners how to effectively use AI code generators. Great. So what we can do that's really interesting when thinking about this idea of chaining prompts together is that we can run a tool called PDF to text, right? And we can send that paper.pdf, right? So this is going to get the text from this PDF. So now I have the paper as a text file right here. So what I can do is I can say cat paper.txt. And I can pipe that to a model. I'm going to pipe that to GPT-4o. And I'm going to say, write a comprehensive list of all the main findings and insights from this paper, right? And then I can pipe that to, and then I can send that to a file, like paper insights, for example, insights.txt. Right? So you can work with different documents in interesting different ways. And this is one of my favorites to like get summaries of papers real quick. So now if I go paper insights, we have all the insights of that paper, Rise LLMs in Computer Education, Prompt Engineering, Pedagogy, etc. So it's a pretty cool way. Now, folks, some fun, interesting repositories that I think you should take a look that can complement the usage of LLMs in the terminal. There's a bunch, but like I noted a few that I really like. I'm going to start with actually, I'm not going to start with Repo Mix. I'm going to start with Git ingest. Now, folks, if you go to any GitHub repo, so I'm going to go to LLMCLI GitHub repo. Okay. So this is the, here, there you go. That's not the GitHub repo. Wait, where is the LLMCLI? I'm on Willison. Where is that GitHub repo? There you go. Okay. This is the repo. So if you go to any repo and you go to the URL and you come over here and you write git-ingest.com. So you replace the GitHub part with just git ingest. What you're going to get is this, which is an amazing free tool that essentially takes your entire repo and converts it into a single file that you can send to a large language model. Now, there's so many different interesting ways that you can use this for. The simplest one would be to copy all the contents of that repo and then pipe that through your clipboard, the way that I just showed you before, to get answers and outputs from an LLM. This is a really fun way. However, you have to take a look at the estimated tokens, which is this tool also provides, which is amazing. Because, for example, 171.1 thousand tokens is more than the context length of a model like GPT-4o. However, it is not more than the context length of Claude 3.7 Sonnet, for example. So I could say copy all, and I could do something like this. I could paste that and then pipe it to Claude 3.7 Sonnet. I think it's 3.7 Sonnet, if I'm not mistaken. And then I could say something like, summarize this repo and give its file and give it its core file structure. All right. So we're going to do that and we're going to see what happens. So we're going to wait because it's a lot of tokens to process. So we are making calls to API calls. So remember that the cost associated with tokens is going to be involved. And there we go, summarizing the right repo. So it got all that information. So it's creating a beautiful summary. It's getting the core stuff and the core info. This is pretty cool. And there you go. I mean, Git ingest is extremely useful. Now, on the same style of Git ingest, folks, you also have something called r.jina.ai, which is from a company called Jina.ai, which is really cool. And essentially what you can do with this is if I go to, for example, the webpage, whatever webpage I want, for example, in this documentation page from the LLMCLI, we're using that a lot. And I go to the beginning of the URL and I write r.jina.ai /. This is going to transform this web page into a Markdown file that I can send to a model. So now this is just a single file with all that information in a Markdown style, which is much more appropriate for LLMs. So I can run Control A, Control C, and now I can do the same thing that I just did before. So this is another tool to work with LLMs because you can essentially just copy all of this and send that to whatever model you want. You don't even have to send it in the terminal. You can send it to ChatGPT, whatever, but it's another different, interesting way of working with. Now, moving on, this is another one that I really like. Moving on, RepoMix does the same thing as Git ingest, but it's something you can install locally on your folder. So RepoMix is really cool. Essentially, what RepoMix does is this. If I go over here and I go RepoMix, so this is a tool to essentially pack an entire repo into a single AI-friendly file. So you can do the same thing that Git ingest does, but with RepoMix, you're doing that in your own local computer. So maybe I clone a repo. Maybe if I clone this repo, I could use RepoMix in my local machine and then get everything about this repo into a single file. So RepoMix is another one that I really like, and I use it quite a bit. Now, in the same style, and again, the amazing Simon Willison has a really cool tool called Files to Prompt, which does the same type of thing, but for any type of folder, any type of structure, any type of whatever. So it's really cool. You just run pip install files to prompt, you go to a terminal, and then, for example, I have a bunch of files here, right? This is like really a bunch of files, but I'm just gonna remove, for example, from my sample notes, I'm gonna remove all the files there because I just copied those from my original notes. There you go. I'm gonna remove this folder, sample notes. Yes, and now I'm gonna make a file called images, and then I'm gonna move all the PNG files to the images, and then I'm gonna make a file called TXT files, and then I'm gonna move all the TXT files to that folder. And the same thing with MD files. Move all the .md files to MD files. Beautiful. So now, and I'm going to do the same with PDFs. PDF files, move .pdf to PDF files. Beautiful. So now I have these folders. What I can do is I can run files to prompt. And what's going to happen is, I have to give the right folder, obviously. There you go. So what you get with files to prompt is the single output containing every single thing that you have in that current folder and all the nested folders. So if I go files to prompt and if I write files to prompt, I can copy to my clipboard, obviously, or I can save it to single LLM ready file.txt. And it will not do that for images. So we're getting errors because it tried to do that for images. So that's the one thing, you're going to get an error when you work with images. But everything that's not an image not an image or a PDF got saved to this .txt file, got indicated there. So if I go cat single file, we get all that information from all the contents of everything into a single file. So it's all that content into a single file. So it's another tool that's really useful. Obviously, you can write a single bash command to do that, but it's nice to have like something that does that for us automatically. So, and again, it's by the one and only, the great Simon Willison. Come on, how can you not love this guy? Now, Another thing I want to talk about is agentic use cases, which I really, really like. Agentic use cases in the terminal essentially mean being able to execute stuff, perform actions. So far, we've been talking about creating files, editing files. We've been talking about this idea of, okay, send and making API calls. But how about taking action in your terminal? And there's a bunch of interesting ways you can do that. Now, the LLMCLI doesn't necessarily support search, but there are some options with the plugins. Like there's the Open Router, there's Gemini that I think can do search. There's a few options there, but you can do some fancy things with agentic use cases in the terminal. For example, there's a bunch of examples of simple terminal agents. Like from Autogen, there's something called Magenta 1 CLI. And Magenta 1 CLI is actually just a very simple tool from the folks that created the new 0.4 version of Autogen. And you can just run pip install Magenta 1 CLI. And if you do that, so I'm going to run that right now here. There you go. So it's going to work with Playwright. So it's going to do browser automation, things like that. And when you do that, I'm just going to copy this prompt, find flights. And instead of from Seattle to Paris, I'm going to say from Lisbon to Ireland, and format the result in a table. So let's see what happens. So what's really cool about this too is that it's going to work in the terminal, but it's going to do stuff outside the terminal by using a browser. And hopefully this little simple demo is going to work, and we're going to be able to see that in live working in just any moment now. There you go. And as the agent works, we're going to be able to see what the agent is doing, what is the information that's getting, and all of that good stuff. So to answer this request, we have assembled a team. So it assembled a bunch of agents to do this thing for me: computer terminal, give verified text, facts to look up, facts to review, So now when it goes to a page, we can actually see it. This is a really cool feature of this agentic use case. We can see what it's doing. We can see the pages that it's accessing. So it's really nice to see it work and then get that information, and to have that like compact into like a single tool that you can just run in the terminal. It's pretty freaking awesome, right? So it's going through pages, it's browsing. Usually it's not like a perfect use case. It might get stuck in some page. It might get stuck. So you have to be aware of that and just test it out. It's not something that I would say you should use on a daily basis, but it's something interesting to experiment with. And I'm going to stop the execution of this agent, but you should definitely, go experiment for yourself with your specific use case. So another one that I really like is, if we go here on, is the LLM term, which is like a simpler version of this, essentially for you to run simple local commands in your terminal. So LLM term is a simple tool that allows you to do commands like list files in the current directory, and it will create that command and then execute it for you. It's something that you can implement kind of like in a simpler way by just doing like a little bit of hack tricks with Bash and the LLMCLI. But it's another one that I think it's kind of interesting, because the concept is running, it creates a command in your terminal and then runs it, and you can, say, okay, yes, you can run that command, don't run that command, etc. So it's pretty cool. Now, another example that I like is Claude Code, which is in research preview right now. Claude Code is essentially a tool by Anthropic, the team that created Claude 3.7 Sonnet, which is one of the best models in the world for coding. And they have this tool that essentially allows you to create an entire project with code, an entire app, everything from the terminal. It's similar to another tool that I like called Aider, which does a similar thing. Aider actually came before, but a lot of people are like super hyped about Claude Code. But Aider and Claude do essentially the same thing. You can do development in your terminal. For example, I'm going to just say Claude Agentic Coding. I'm going to create a folder called Agentic Coding. I'm going to go over there. And if you've already installed Claude with this command, npm install, which requires you to have Node.js 18 plus installed in your machine, run Claude, and then you can say with your permission, yes, it can execute files. And now you get this very nice UI to set up whatever project you want. Like, for example, I could say, build me a simple UI in Python to download and visualize cool images from free APIs like NASA, NASA, or there's another one, Unsplash, I think. And Claude is going to work autonomously within your machine and get stuff done for you. It's pretty amazing. It works really well. Working with Python scripts, folks. Now, I could do a full video just on this topic, and I'm not going to do that because it's way too much work. I'm actually going to just, for now, I'm just going to show you like a few summary examples, but I will probably do like a single video just on this topic because it's fascinating. And I have a full course actually about this in O'Reilly, if you want to check that out. It's called Automate Tasks with, let me see, I forgot the name now. Automate Tasks. Yeah, using AI tools in Python to automate tasks. Folks, doing a little bit of marketing for myself right now. It's a really cool course. If you want to check that out, it's essentially, I'm going to show how to do the stuff that I'm going to summarize now. And essentially what this allows you to do is you can explore different ways of building simple Python scripts in a way using a tool called UV for package management that you generate a single file that is a tool on itself. And there's different interesting ways that you can integrate the idea of MCP into this, but I don't want to get too complicated right now. So I'm going to show you just a few examples. All right. As you can see here, Claude is already working really well, and it seems like it worked. That's pretty cool. Let's see if it worked. Image viewer. That's pretty cool. Let's see. And if I open it up, oh, look at that. That's amazing. Fetching an image. That's so cool. Unsplash, fetch an image. All right, Unsplash didn't work. Dog API. All right, let's fetch an image. Oh, that's amazing. That's so cool. Folks, I just made this with Claude in like one single prompt, and with the basic requirements from my own virtual environment, it already works perfectly. It's just the coolest thing ever, right? So yeah, that's the power of agentic use cases in the terminal. So check that out. But now we're talking about Python scripts. So for that, it's actually pretty cool. So if I'm going to create a folder here, Py scripts, right? And I have a few examples that I generated in the past that I think are worth mentioning. So one of them is called navigate the LLM output. So I'm just going to copy that over here. The other one is, I think it's called change this LLM.py, which is I'm going to save here. And let me see what is the other one that I was going to show. Searching through Enki flashcards. There you go. So if I go, I think it's called find. Yeah, find Enki cards. There you go. So folks, in these examples, these tools essentially allow you to, I created these scripts, which we can take a look here on cursor. Let's go to navigate LLM output. And my idea with these tools was to complement the use of AI in the terminal with the missing aspects of it. So like there's missing UI aspects of working with the AI in the terminal. There's missing information fetching. There's a bunch of things. There are gaps, right? And you can write Python scripts to patch those gaps. And what's really cool is in this example here, actually, I'm going to just generate a full example from scratch and then show in these examples how they kind of relate. So let's just come over here on this thing, and we can say, I'm going to use Claude 3.7 Sonnet for that. And we're going to create some Python script. And what we're going to do that's different, I'm actually going to demonstrate with Claude projects first, and then do an example in the terminal. So if I open up Claude.ai here on my browser, and I go to my projects, which should be right here. There you go. I have a project called Python Tools. There you go. In this project, and if you don't know about Claude projects, is where you can just essentially create a project where Claude integrates with a bunch of files and instructions to create really specialized files and reply to information, etc. You can do that for studying, you can do that for research, you can do that for generating projects following instructions. And I have a set of instructions that if I go over here, I have a set of instructions for creating Python scripts with a very specific format. And this format follows this very interesting idea that I got from this article by Simon Willison about leveraging UV to generate single file Python scripts that run out of the box. You don't have to worry about package management and virtual environments and so on. It's really cool. So the inspiration for this obviously was, again, the one and only, the great Simon Willison. Wrote a really fascinating article called Building Python Tools with a One-Shot Prompt Using UV Run and Claude Projects. You might imagine why I'm using Claude Projects, right? I don't think I did as good of a job as he did, obviously, but it's pretty cool. The idea is if you go to the UV documentation, single scripts, I think it's called. There you go, running scripts. There you go. There's this idea that if you write a Python file and you add some inline metadata to the file, like in this example here, as you can see, and you specify within the file the dependencies for running that file, UV will parse that metadata and set up everything for you automatically and run the file out of the box. So this is so cool because, for example, if I just copy this file here and I'm going to paste that information to Claude, I'm going to say, leveraging this idea of UV inline metadata, I'm actually going to do even better. I'm going to copy everything from this page, and I'm going to do it in the way that I showed you before. So r.jina.ai, so that I get all the info from this documentation. There you go. There you go. Control A. And now I'm going to say, create a single Python file that can be executed out of the box with UV run to, let's see, plot some interesting data from some free, easy to access API and show that in a nice dashboard leveraging matplotlib and Seaborn, which Seaborn is a bit tougher. So like you'll see what happens. And I've never tested this before. So let's see. Simpleplot.py, it's going to be the name. And I want to clean the Python script first. So I'm going to say clean Python and then simpleplot.py. I don't know if it's going to work perfectly, but let's take a look. So I'm pasting that information from the UV documentation. I'm sending that to Claude. I'm asking for the script. I'm hopefully cleaning up the Python ticks. And then I'm saving that to a file called Python simpleplot.py. So let's see if that works well. Command not found, simple, whatever. Okay. But we have the sample plot, which if I just do cat, okay, that looks like it worked. It looks like it worked pretty well. And it generated the script. So I'm not even going to try seeing if it runs, because this probably at the bottom here might not run. So because this part on the bottom might not run, I'm going to open up cursor and I'm just going to go to that file. I'm going to, yeah, so we got to comment a few things that Claude did not comment for us before. But now there you go. This is the file, right? I just had to do these two commentings. And now I'm going to run UV run simple plot and let's see if it works. So packages already installed. Everything works beautifully. So I didn't have to worry about that. And let's see if it actually generates the dashboard. Oh, I didn't. Live demos. And it's actually not live, but yeah. All right. So it didn't work out of the box, but it's okay. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this, right? And I'm going to say, and I'm going to do what? I'm going to go to the simple plot file. I'm going to just paste the error and the script. I'm going to copy everything. And now that I did that, I'm going to paste that to Claude. So I'm going to paste LLM. There you go. And I'm going to send the same plot, right? And I'm going to say, fix this error and follow this again, right? So that's all I'm going to do, just to see if we can actually generate the proper version now. because now the model has access to the previous version of the script, the error that was generated, that prompt again, and we're saving that to sampleplot.py. So hopefully this time it's going to work pretty well. And hopefully it will be able to execute what we asked. And the core idea here, folks, that I'm emphasizing with this is that it's a simple way for you to generate scripts with a prompt and then run them, right? UV gives you the inline metadata option with the dependencies, the Python version. And by just running UV run in the terminal, you get the script running right away, which is really cool. All right, so now we can go to sample plot now, and we can first do a cat sample plot. Okay. And now we can go to that file sample plot, and we can see that the file is there. So we can comment out these things that should not be here. And we can run UV run sample plot. Okay, so now, there you go. So as you can see, folks, I mean, how crazy is that? So it plotted some temperature and Bitcoin and crypto stuff and stock price information. So everything ran out of the box just like that. So this is pretty awesome. And what's cool is that, for example, if I go to one of the files that I had, like navigate LLM output. So I have this file for navigating the outputs of an LLM right in the terminal, but it doesn't have the UV metadata, right? So I can copy this file, and then I can go to my Claude projects here, where I have the instructions from the UV documentation exactly on how to do that inline metadata, how it works from the UV documentation. And I added those instructions here. So I can come here, I can paste this here in this tool that I did with UV, with Claude projects. And hopefully what I would get is, there you go, the creation of that script with the correct UV inline metadata, which is what you're seeing right here. Paperclip, etc., with the script, etc. So what I can do is we can copy this and see if it works out of the box. So I can copy this. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to paste that to navigate, whatever. And we're going to run UV run navigate, and we're going to see if it works. The only thing is that I have to run this on some output, some input. So I forgot about that. So here's what I'm going to do to fix that. Code, UV run, So I need an example on how to use this. So LLM, generate 5 suggestions for projects involving AI in the terminal as bullet points, right? And now I'm going to pipe this to UV run navigate, So hopefully this works. And there you go. So this is really cool, folks, because now this UI, this very simple that you're seeing, is the Python script running on the output of the LLM that I just ran on the terminal. So this is just a very simple thing where I can just select whatever the LLM gives me and then see what I want to copy to my clipboard and what I don't want to copy. So for example, I want to delete this bit, delete this, I don't want this. Maybe like from the examples, I don't want this one, I don't want this one, I just want these. So now when I'm done, I can say copy and exit. So I can press C. Yes, and now I have all of that copied, only the information that I wanted. So this is the power of integrating everything that we've been talking about with Python scripts to make your workflows go completely crazy. I mean, this is just, it gets really cool as you go more and more into these ideas. So we could go on, but this is pretty much the core idea that I wanted to discuss. Now, I have other examples with like highlighting parts and stuff, but I think this example is good enough. And other things that you can do is, for example, you can use the Perplexity API to do your own little research assistant right in the terminal, and you can integrate MCP servers and a bunch of other things. Now, the final example that I want to talk about is Jinja templates, which is really, really nice, which is a way to do prompt templates that work directly in your terminal. So how do you do that? So first, I'm going to show you how it works. So I can, for example, let's say that I wanted to do, I have one that's for creating Enki flashcards. So I'll show you what that means. Imagine I go to Claude, right? And I get some conversation. Let's say, prompt for thumbnail creation, Whisper CPP audio. All right. So this one, okay, this one is a pretty good one. Let me edit a fix. No, this is not good enough. Automating GDPR contract compliance. Okay, perfect. I think this one is not good enough as well. So let's see. Let's go to some paper. So archive, attention is all you need. I always use this paper for examples. So I'm going to copy all this information from this paper. All right. So I just copy, Control C, go to my terminal, and I go P. And now I'm going to write PMPT, which is the alias that I have on the terminal. And then I'm going to write Enki, and I'm going to autocomplete with Enki cards, which is a template that I have written as a Jinja template that creates Enki cards that can be automatically uploaded to Enki, the software. And then I'm going to pipe this to a model. So I'm going to pipe this to LLM, to GPT-4o. And then I'm going to say, I'm not going to say anything. So that's all. I'm going to take this paper, pipe it to Enki flashcards, to this prompt that uses some sort of way of some template to create Enki cards. And then I'm going to send that to a model. And look what I get in return. So I'm going to actually save that to Enki cards example. No, I'm just going to show you the output first. So GPT-4o. So when I run this, folks, this is what we get. It seems like there's an error. Could you provide the actual content? All right. So let's Control A, Control C. Let's test this out. Let's see if I got the actual contents of the paper. Yeah, I got it. So now let's try that again. Yes. So now, as you can see, the cards are being created based on the paper. And I can, if I wanted to, automatically upload them to Enki. But we're not going to do that right now. But as you can see, the cards are being created. They're related to the paper, obviously. Transformer model, attention is all you need, etc., etc. I could go very specific. But now let's see how this type of thing works. So what I'm doing here is, if I go to PMPT and I go, which PMPT, it indicates that I have a file, which is a Python script called Jinja templates, tarara. So first thing is PMPT is a little, it's like a bash function that I have on my aliases, and it goes to this Python script. So if I copy that and I go cursor this, can open up that alias, hopefully. No, there you go. We can. Yes. So this is the alias. And what this alias does is essentially I have a location for where my template is. And it's inside of this LLM templates folder, which is in the current folder where this file is located. And all this thing is doing is it's a simple function to parse information that's coming in from the input from the terminal, and another one to render the template, the Jinja template, using this basic 3-line script where I set up the environment, I load from the templates, I get the template name, I render that template, and that's it. And this part is just essentially parsing the input from the terminal. Now, what's cool is that if I go to Enki card, whatever, so I'm going to go to the correct location. I'm going to open up cursor in the right folder. I'm going to go to, first this goes away, and then I'm going to go Enki cards Jinja.2. This is the template that just went on to create those cards based on the paper. Essentially, create this amount of cards for the content below and try to capture all the main information. And this is the variable content, which is the output from the clipboard that gets piped to this template. So it gets replaced here. And this other information, this is a default, the default number of cards to create is 10, unless I give it another number. But usually I just create 10 and that's it. The core idea is that I have a bunch of Jinja 2 files to do different things like bash commands, bullet instructions, Enkify a full conversation, Enkify a Python script, generate Google search queries. This one is actually really cool. Finally, there's another cool example, which is building command line tools with Rust. You can leverage a similar approach that I did with Python scripts, but to create actual Rust apps that are much faster and more performant to work in the terminal with you. And I have a few examples. And you can do that for rewriting tools in the terminal, for template variation. You can go wild with this. And there's a bunch of fun example use cases that I advise you to take a look, like creating bulk Anki cards, integrating tools like wget, curl, etc. Combining commands like mmdc. This is a really fun one, folks. I'm going to show an example. This is a command that I ran. Essentially, with a single command, you generate a full graph in Mermaid style and render that graph, and then you can showcase it. So if I go back to where we were before, and I run this command, with this command, what you can do is you can generate directly with one command an image like this. Star is a sunny, etc., etc. So that's pretty cool. And there's so many things that you can do that go completely wild with this. The final example I'm going to show folks is that you can actually work directly with images to do OCR, scan information, or ask an LLM what this image is, etc. For example, I can say, if I, for example, take a screenshot of something, for example, I'm going to take a screenshot of the browser page with my course. I can run this command, for example, LLM extract text, scan document, and there you go. You can extract the text from that image directly. So you can do things like, what is this? And you can do all sorts of things with images. You can go wild, and the APIs are getting cheaper and cheaper. So you can do that for very, very cheap at the API call cost. And there's so many other things that you can go on, and you can work with PDFs using PDFTK. You can convert everything to Markdown using a tool called Markdown. There's so many things. And the last thing I'll say, folks, is that there are layers for working with AI in the terminal, just like there are layers for working with AI in general. So you start with basic file creation and editing, right? So Vim, Nano, etc. You create files, edit files. Then you can start piping stuff like we were showing here to get output from a file, send it to LLM, output from your clipboard, etc. And then you start running commands by doing things like eval this command, right? For example, this is a way for you to run a bash command directly in the terminal. You're moving towards more agency and more action in your terminal. And then you start working with agentic commands like LLM term, Claude code, Aider, Magenta 1 CLI, and so on, which are, they go autonomously in your terminal and they start doing stuff for you, and you have this more supervision control over what's going on. And then you go fully agentic terminals like Warp. They do not sponsor this video, folks, but Warp is like an example that they try to do a fully agentic terminal that essentially you ask for things and then things just happen in your terminal. Pretty cool, pretty interesting idea. And I like this set of layers of control because I like actually being more on these three first rather than in these two. But I do like sometimes moving from, let's say, this to this when I want a little bit more, a little bit faster iteration. And obviously when I work in Cursor is a merge of having an IDE where I can edit files directly, and Cursor has an agentic mode that can create files, edit, run terminal commands, everything into one. So that's why I use it. You can also use Windsurf for that, which is really powerful, or you can use just basic VS Code with GitHub Copilot, has similar capabilities. And I kind of like where this evolution of AI is going with, especially when working the terminal. And that's why I did this video. So thanks for watching, folks. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time. Cheers.